Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. As your host, Matt Zahab, we are buzzing as always. And today, we are fortunate to have one of the Web3 gaming goats on the pod today. Not just a Web3 gaming goat, but a Web2 gaming goat as well. Can't wait to get into this one. Been playing tag on this one for a while, and we finally got him. We are off. Folks, today we have Amitt Mahajan on the show today, founder of Proof of Play. And you guys probably know him from the creators of Pirate Nation, the fully on-chain, free-to-play, pirate-themed RPG. Prior to founding Proof of Play, Amitt was the founder and CTO of MyMiniLife, which was acquired by Zynga. He was the founder and CEO of Toro, which was acquired by Google, and the co-founder and CTO of Rare Bits, an NFT marketplace launched in 2018, the same week as OpenSea. While at Zynga, he co-created perhaps my favorite Facebook game ever, which was FarmVille. It had 300 million players. You probably played it back in the OG days of Facebook. 1 billion plus in revenue with probably stupidly high profit margins as well. And he served as the CTO of Zynga Japan. Before his entrepreneurial work, he was an engineer at Epic Games on the Unreal Engine and Gears of War. What a friggin' bio. Amitt, welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. And nice intro. I appreciate that.
Hey, you gotta butter you up a little bit, you know? We don't like blowing smoke on this pod, but I mean, I'm not even blowing smoke. These are all just facts here. We got to start with your past. Zynga, one of the goatiest, I use the word goatiest. It's a mix of like goat and est, like greatest of all timeiest, you know, when it's potentially up for debate if he or she or it or them is the greatest of all time. Zynga, one of the goatiest gaming studios of all time, not up for discussion. And of course, you co-created FarmVille. Folks, if you don't know what FarmVille is, it was an electric factory back in the day. I think I was in grades 7 and 8. I was playing with everyone on my hockey team. I was playing with everyone in my school. I'm a 95, so you could maybe help with this, but I want to say maybe it was grade 8 and grade 9. But everyone was playing it. How incredible was working on that game? You got to give me some stories. Did you guys know it would go absolutely parabolic? Any good stories you have working at Zynga and tying it into FarmVille? Would love to kick off the pod with that.
Yeah. I mean, before we launched, started working at FarmVille, we had something called MyMiniLife, which I think you mentioned. And it was kind of like, it was a virtual world, kind of like The Sims, you know, or like Habbo Hotel or Club Penguin. I don't know if you play any of that stuff either.
Of course.
Yeah.
Club Penguin, yeah, big time.
And so basically we had this product, we were working on it for 2 years, and then we know what we were doing. It was our first company. And we talked to someone at Facebook and they're like, what's your retention? And that means how many people are coming back every day?
Yeah.
And it was something like 5%. So like, that's just like god awful. That's like, you should shut up. You know, they even said that. They're like, that is the worst retention we've ever heard. You guys should go shut your company down and get jobs. And so we're like, oh my God, what do we do? And so we went, we thought about it for a bit. And then we, you know, at the time there were some other games on Facebook and we're like, well, you know, we built all this technology. Maybe we can like utilize it to build Facebook games. And so, you know, we got together, came up with a little like 4-week plan because we're running out of money. We have to do something fast. So we came up with a 4-week plan to basically build a farm simulation game on Facebook. And we started working on it. We talked to Zynga. At one point, we got introduced to them, and they're like, hey, like, you should come do this here with our team and build it within Zynga. And here, we'll like give you a bunch of money, which you guys are short on. So they acquired us. And then we launched the game within Zynga. It took us about 5 weeks to develop it.
That's it?
And yeah, it was insanely fast. It was just like pure flow state. Yeah, it was crazy.
Crap.
And then, you know, we took bets the night before we launched it, we took bets. We had a whiteboard and everyone wrote down their bet of how many users we thought we were going to have at the end of day one. And I remember the highest number was like something like 2,000 or 3,000. It was in the thousands. And at the end of the first day after we launched the game, all we did was we put it live and then we sent it to like everyone at the company. And we said, hey, like this new game launched. And there was like maybe like 300 people at Zynga. And from there, that was the seed. Right. And then as you play the game, it like posts to Facebook, you know, there's like viral feeds and all this other stuff. At the end of the first day, I think we had about 18,000 people play the game. And then it was something like 50 or 60,000 the next day, 300,000 day 3, and then 1 million users day 4. So it went viral very fast. And then every week So Zynga did this thing where like we'd celebrate like million DAU milestones.
That's daily active users, which is like the most sought after and important gaming metric.
Yeah, so basically every day there's a million people logging to games. Like we, I don't know how many. It's like 50,000 people in a stadium. So it's like 20 stadiums worth of people every day showing up to play the game, right? And so like every week we were adding another million users, and eventually we capped out at something like 13 million daily actives. And the game went live viral very fast, and I think there's a bunch of reasons for that. One is I think that like the art style was like very approachable,
so
right?
Clean. Like kids, adults, clean. Old people, you name it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not offensive, right? Yep. It's like the DreamWorks of art styles, right? Even Pixar is somewhat opinionated in their art, right? But DreamWorks, like everyone looks like no one looks at Kung Fu Panda's like, oh, like that's not for me. It's like, all right,
it's friendly.
It's good enough.
It's welcoming.
It's friendly.
It's disarming. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's not like necessarily cool always, but it's definitely like it's like a enjoyable experience. And so that was the first thing. And the second thing is like, I think everyone relates to the fantasy of being on a farm.
Yeah. Blissful, peaceful, got to do your own shit, take us back to the old days.
Yeah, and there's like, farming and making food and sharing food. It's very like, it's part of the human condition. And so like, I think those two things really led to the game kind of resonating with people. Actually, a little bit of a factoid here. The guy who did the music for FarmVille also is doing the music for Pirate Nation, and the art director of FarmVille is a co-founder of Proof of Play as an art director here as well.
You brought
doing that for Pirate Nation.
You brought the big boys and the big gals. You had to. Why not?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to, and I don't want this to be a full episode on FarmVille, of course. We are going to get into Pirate Nation and Proof of Play. But this is not just for my own selfish intuition and curiosity, but it's truly one of the greatest games of all time. Now, when you guys built it, could you have done that without Facebook?
No.
You needed that,
Not at all.
Because distribution, right?
That's distribution. That's right.
Yeah.
So I mean, the entirety of Zynga to some degree was that insight that, hey, distribute. And Mark Pincus, the CEO of Zynga, he had like, this was like his like third or fourth company, and he had already seen, the power of unique distribution models. So he was like, oh, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to get access to like millions of users. And arguably, you're kind of seeing this right now. You want alpha? I mean, go look at what's happening right in Telegram and Discord.
Exactly.
Both of these things have just opened up platforms that give you access to hundreds of millions of users.
Yeah.
Right. And so Facebook at the time was that. And basically, without the distribution channel of Facebook, there was no FarmVille. And in fact, the other thing too is the social graph, right? The FarmVille and those games were a new type of game. Right, they were taking advantage of the fact that, hey, you could play individually, but also play together, right? So I have my own farm, but I'm like next to my friends, right? They're playing their farm, and then we like kind of interact, like kind of organically through our solo gameplay. And so that idea of playing individually together is like really powerful. It makes you feel like you're not alone, you're connected, you're helping each other out. It's collaborative, and it creates that social feel. And that was the entirety of the thesis around Zynga, is this idea of connection through play.
So interesting. Man, that was crazy. I, again, just still thinking about everything that went down. And I've thought about this as an adult. Obviously, I've never played it as an adult. I only go on Facebook to check, birthdays nowadays. I don't do anything else. But back when I was addicted and would come home from school and would play during school when I had time, in the library. Every time I'd get home from hockey, I think there was a 12-hour time where you could re-farm your shit. I could be wrong. Yeah. And it was over 15.
It's called the appointment mechanic. You basically are choosing which crops to plant, which then sets a timer for you to come back to the game and then harvest the crops. And so what that does is it allows the player to choose how often they play the game, right? And if you play more often, the rewards are better. If you play less often, they're not as good. So but the point is that you feel a connection, that you want to come back.
We got to take a quick sort of 5-minute segment. And then again, we can tie this into Pirate Nation and Proof of Play. But I've been fortunate enough to work with some incredible teams in Web3 gaming who are similar to yourself in that they have worked on and for and created behemoths in Web2 gaming. Shout out Tomer Pascal and the team at OwnPlay and Cityverse. Fortunate to have Tomer on the pod. Did some work with him way back in the day. The amount I learned from them is absolutely incredible. They worked at Playtika. I'm sure you've heard of Playtika. I'd love if you could give a couple of quick riffs or points perhaps on some of the more underrated and nuance and less understood aspects of building games. And I'll throw out a couple and you can build on them. But just like what you said about that timer, when people are playing games, when actual gamers are playing, we're not cognizant of how every little thing in that game has been designed for not only us to have fun, but for you guys to profit as well. And I'm totally fine with that. I believe in, in capitalism. But Amitt, I'd love if you could give some examples of what goes into building the game, the viral loops, the importance of social, like you just discussed, needing to be in Web3 on Telegram and Discord. Like, I'd love if you could just go into the ins and outs, the under the table, very high leverage, high needle moving things that must be done in order to create a really successful game. Sorry for the long-winded question there.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. So I think fundamentally, you just like really reduce the game to its most basic thing, which is giving player a series of interesting choices to make, and then giving them high amounts of agency.
Ooh,
right.
I like that.
And I'm not gonna take credit for the series of interesting choices. That's Sid Meier who created Civilization.
Yeah,
Ever
heard of him?
Yeah, which is my favorite game of all time. And I think so much of what we do is about creating player agency, right? You're creating a system of choices, but to me, really great games, it's really hard to see the edges of the system, right? And where the complexity of decision making is so high so quickly, such that you actually, as a player, can't model it. Right. So chess, you can use chess as an example. Like, there's only so many moves you can make per turn.
So you can look far ahead.
Yeah, but
I get it.
But when you start to look far ahead, it becomes unbounded very quickly. So you can't actually model the entire thing. I mean, a computer can, but a human has a very hard time to do it. And so whenever I play games, I always feel like I'm trying to find the edges of the system. Where's the game break? Something like tic-tac-toe is too simple, right? Because you can essentially, there's only so many choices. And so when we think about something like FarmVille, the choices you're making are, what do I plant? How do I spend my resources? Whose farms do I interact with? Like, even FarmVille itself is not that complex of a game, but as you add more features, right, the set of choices starts to expand. But the hard thing is to create meaningful features as you add systems without the game becoming too muddied, right?
Yeah. Loses some of its flair and its purity.
Yeah, when we talk, like, in a lot of game developers, they talk about finding the fun, right? So the idea that, like, okay, I'm going to like sit there, I'm going to iterate on this thing and try to get to a point where it's fun, right? And so so when we think about games, the types of games we're making are more like, they're not like twitchy games, like a first person shooter or whatever. These tend to be games that are like turn based, or they have like discrete actions that you're taking, or like very specific like actions that you're taking, kind of like a board game. And so it's all about the strategy and the decision that's happening in front of you, versus like a Mario Brothers or first person shooter where it's about the feel of like firing a gun or jumping or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And so these are just different things, right? So let's just focus on the choices. So for us, it's like you're presented with choices that actually have consequences, right? And ideally, you're creating a game where there's no clear, always right choice, that you actually need to make trade-offs, right? And the thing is, it's actually easier to do that in multiplayer games, right? So if you and I are playing poker, there's only so many choices I can make in poker, right? With every turn. Right, I can choose to bet or raise or fold.
Check, fold,
yeah, exactly. There's only so many choices. The thing that makes it interesting and hard is you and I have asymmetric information, and so what we're doing is we're playing a zero sum game. For me to win, you need to lose, right? And so so in like in a single player game, it's all about like, okay, like we're creating a story and then the player has to choose, like, and then it's them versus the system. In a multiplayer game, it's people versus each other. So the content is not what we've created. The content is actually the other people, right? And so that's the reason a game like poker or chess is evergreen, because it's about the other people, right? So in something like FarmVille, we created a single player loop, right? Which is, I come every day, I plow, I plant, I harvest my crops, and I rearrange my farm, right? And then as we started with that was what launched day one with the game. And then we started to add additional loops. Every time I harvest, sometimes I get a notification saying I could share some of my crop yield with some of my friends. So I then take that. Now that loop is now turned from a single player loop into a loop that actually involves my friends. So now instead of just harvesting, I'm now harvesting and sharing. So you keep adding verbs to what the player is doing in a play session. And what you're doing is you can then direct them in different ways, right? So we can direct them towards interacting with their friends. We can direct them towards having to go to the marketplace. We can direct them towards, running out of resources and then potentially purchasing something using in-app purchases, right? So you could basically use the loops and constraints within these loops and decisions and the trade-offs to essentially direct player energy in different ways, right? And so through that, what we're doing is we're constructing these. I wouldn't say it's quite a fun house. What we really want to do is construct a sandbox. In an ideal world, you're actually creating a simulation, not just directing people towards stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we approach it. We approach it, we create a simple loop first, make sure it's great, find the fun, then layer in more complexity, layer in leaderboards, layer in achievements, layer in different player motivations to actually capture players' attention. So after FarmVille came out, I got asked a lot. But they're like, people would be like, hey, can you gamify my business? Because that was like a big thing. This was a big thing for 5 or 10 years. Everyone was trying to figure out how do we take advantage of games becoming huge? Let's add badges and achievements to our SaaS product.
It's gotta be fun. FarmVille was fun. Little kids like me were not doing it for the clout. Oh, I have the biggest farm. Yeah, part of us was like, oh, my farm's sicker than yours, but it was fucking fun. Pardon my French. It was electric. Every time I logged on, I was having fun. All this badging and gamification, it's nonsense. You do it for a bit to get your free fucking coffee and you fuck off. Sorry, I'm getting heated, but man.
No.
Continue.
And so that was my argument 10 years ago. I was like, look, you're basically achievements, badges, leaderboards, scoring systems. These things are fuel. They're rocket fuel, but you have to build the rocket first, right? And so for us, that meant finding that core loop, right? And then, so day one, we had none of that stuff. And then we start to add it. But I will say this, there are different types of player profiles, right? And a good RPG, a good kind of big game, it addresses all of them, right? You have the min-maxers, people who come in, they're like, every day, I want to figure out I have my spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure out exactly how to spend my gold. I'm going to figure out exactly how to buy my items. So I min-max the yield. And you see a lot of this in GameFi, right? In crypto.
It's the same thing. Those are your MVPs. Those are, it's the 80-20 rule. 20% of the lads and lasses who are bringing 80% of the revenue. That's the same thing with gaming.
Maybe. There's not necessarily a correlation between these people and payers. But what you will find is that these are folks who will break your system first. So if you have an exploit or you did not design something in a way that is balanced, people will find a way to break it. The second way is this is like my mom. She's just like, I just want to create a pretty farm. So for her, it was all about oh, I like the color of this tree. You know? I want to decorate. It's gardening. It's decoration. Yeah. It's this more it's a form of meditation.
Art. Yeah.
Right. It's art.
Yeah.
And I would also argue the status is part of that too. Oh, I want to go buy a vanity item or this thing because it's a cool thing to have there. And then you have the people who are competitive, right? The folks who are like, I want the leaderboard. Yeah. I need to be number one.
Yeah.
And so basically there's these different types of player profiles, right? And when we design these games, it's all about kind of finding, ensuring that you have an avenue for every one of these archetypes. And when these people start to interact, that's where it starts to make the economy really interesting, because you'll have folks who are just irrationally will spend a lot of money for an item, and not because it's the most useful item in the game, just because it looks cool, right? And so just like humans, we have different motivations. And so it's up to us as game designers to ensure that different people with different incentive models and different motivations can play the game in their way and still have fun.
Wow, I wish we had more time. Folks, we are going to take a quick break as Amitt is literally en fuego right now. He's absolutely on fire. This is a masterclass and a half, and we're getting a little tight for time already. So when we get back, we are going to buzz into everything Proof of Play and Pirate Nation related. Until then, huge shout out to Prime XBT, longtime friends and sponsors of the Crypto News Pod. We love Prime XBT as they offer a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a vet, you can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. Prime XBT is also offering an exclusive promo for listeners of the pod. Use the promo code CryptoNews50 to take advantage of this offer and receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Again, that is CryptoNews50 to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. And now back to the show with Amitt, who is currently in the middle of his gaming TED Talk as we speak. My head's spinning right now. I got a lot of typing away, not even like show notes, my own notes, got my own Notion page locked and loaded right now. We're jumping back in. Shameless elevator pitch. Tell us about Proof of Play, obviously the parent company, and tell us everything about Pirate Nation. Not everything, but give us the elevator pitch and then I'll jig and jag and throw some questions your way.
Sure. So FarmVille, 300 million players, right? That game was shut down in 2020. And the reason why was because it was never ported from Flash to mobile phones. Wow. And so just gone. All those farms, all the creativity, my mom's beautiful garden, gone. She still asked me, she's like, are they ever bringing the game back? I'm like, I don't know, And so I was like, look, it's a shame. That game belonged to everyone that played it, not just the company that created it, right? And so when I started Proof of Play, the initial impetus was this idea that the blockchain is essentially forever, right? So if you think about it, like every form of art we've ever created it's on paper, it's, potentially stealable, it can burn in a fire, it could be, whatever, right? Digital art, it's just like in a database, maybe it's on a USB drive. If you take photos, you're putting it on Dropbox or Google Photos or iCloud or wherever, those companies may not be around in 50 years, or maybe you forget the password and they just wipe your data and someone forgets the credit card lapses. So the idea of permanence is actually, it's kind of like a mirage, yes. Right? It's not really a thing. So the question is like, if you want something to last forever, where do you actually put it? And so I thought a lot about it.
Under your bed.
Under your bed, or you put it on chain.
Bingo.
Right? And so the idea here is that if I put like a photo or a piece of art or a punk, right, on the Ethereum blockchain, so for example, there are 100,000 nodes all over the world that are keeping a copy of that data. And as long as there's one node running, it will continue to survive.
Yeah.
And there's an incentive model to keep it running. So look, if you're 1,000 years into the future from today and you're looking back, the Ethereum blockchain may not be around anymore, but perhaps whatever does exist has a copy of that data. Right. And so versus, like a random USB drive that you have in a safe somewhere. And so when I started thinking of it that way, I was like, oh, if I were to make a bet today that I could create something that's going to last 1,000 years into the future, I'd put it on chain. I think that's the most likely heuristic. It's not a guarantee, but of all the things available to us, it seems to me like the best one we have. And so in a lot of ways, the Ethereum blockchain is a time capsule. It's our shared time capsule. We together are choosing what to put into that time capsule. Right. And this is actually why I got into NFTs. I was like, oh, the reason a punk, for example, has value is because it's the first type of this like permanent art. It's like the equivalent of digital caveman drawings. Right. There's actual art history there because of this. Right. And then there's all this other stuff that came after it, and there's generative art and all those other cool things. So when you start to apply that to players and to game data and to this idea that you as a player are writing the story of your character, it starts to get a little bit more interesting to put that stuff on chain. So for example, when you play Zelda and I play Zelda, your Link is different than my Link because, maybe your Link goes and does the dungeons in this order and then they, went on this adventure and then spent some time, leveling up or whatever. And my Link just like derpy and just dies all the time. And so these are actually, through our gameplay, we're actually writing stories about these characters. So the original impetus of Proof of Play was, what if we were to put the entire game on chain? Everything a player does is recorded in this kind of permanent ledger, which essentially means that we can always go and look at the entire history of someone's play. We can look at the entire history of a character. We can now take those characters and use them potentially in other games because everything on chain is open read. So there's all these like really interesting things that come out of creating what's known as fully on-chain games. And so proof of play, our entire intention is to create fully on-chain games. And the idea behind Pirate Nation was the best way to create new technology is to not just create the technology or infrastructure, which a lot of companies do. Our intention is to just go and create fun games. And then when players come and play our games, we're going to naturally find cases where the technology is holding us back and we have to improve it in order to deliver a better gaming experience.
Love that. Love that.
So I stand on the shoulders of giants. I learned this from Tim Sweeney at Epic. He decided he wanted to go and build 3D games. He didn't know how to do it. He's like, I need a 3D engine. What's the best way to build a 3D engine? By just trying to build a 3D game. So he built Unreal, the original Unreal, and in the process of building that game, created the Unreal Engine, which then became the basis for every future Epic game, and now, Fortnite and all this other stuff. Everything, right? The Unreal Engine is the thing that powers most, top tier 3D games, and now movies and stuff too. So for us, Pirate Nation is our way of creating fully on-chain games. And as a result of trying to create Pirate Nation, we've been forced to create an on-chain gaming engine and an on-chain gaming editor so that we can easily create that content for fully on-chain games. So that's what Proof of Play and Pirate Nation are. Pirate Nation itself is like you mentioned, an on-chain, a pirate-themed RPG. Which I'm happy to answer more questions about.
Amitt, I'm going to definitely have to have you on for round 2 here because there's so much. You guys are doing over 2 million transactions a day. Your gas is hella cheap. 120K unique wallets have interacted with the Apex chain. I haven't even asked you about Apex chain yet. I guess we'll start with that. I haven't asked you about Pirate Token. Before we get into all the sort of nitty gritty fun stuff about this, one question that I'm sure you get asked all the time as one of the behemoths from Web2 gaming, what are some of the objections that you get asked in regards to Web3 gaming? I'm sure it's a lot finance related. Is the token actually worth it? Are you just incentivizing people to play? And is it not fun as well? All that crap. Like, what are some of the objections you get? What are some of the most common, perhaps negative questions? And how do you handle that? And how do you sort of go about telling them your long-term vision for the space, for Proof of Play, and for Pirate Nation?
Yeah, no, there's a lot. And I think rightfully so. So crypto's a scam. And I'm like, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
For sure.
You got a point.
Right? For sure.
Yep.
But I try to explain to people, look, it's ethically neutral technology, right? When people dismiss NFTs, for example, out of hand, I say that's like dismissing like stock certificates out of hand. It's just a vehicle for holding value, whatever it is, right? And so if people use it to sell digital tulips, like that's true. But there was also penny stocks. It doesn't mean the entire stock market is a scam, right? And so you have to reintroduce nuance into the argument. The second one I see is, it's too expensive to take transactions on chain. And that's true. I mean, if you are only operating on the Ethereum L1, it's true.
It's a soak.
Right? But we have L2s now. We have side chains. We have specific chains. We have gasless forwarding. We have ways of solving that problem. There's too many pop-ups. I'm constantly, signing transactions. Okay, well, we can solve that through gasless relay, transaction relaying, which is something that we've developed. Oh, it's too complicated. I believe that too. No one cares about the crypto side of it. I also agree about that. I don't think you care if FarmVille was running on AWS or Microsoft's databases.
No one. Was it
gamers
fun?
Don't care.
Exactly. And now today, it's not just, again, with Web3, it's not just, was it fun or is it fun? It's now, is it fun? And could I potentially be incentivized? And it has to be asked in that order. 3 years ago, it was, am I going to make money? Is this going to make me rich? It's fugazi, just like anything else. It was, the first to market movers had a little bit of an advantage. Today, first question, non-negotiable is still, am I having fun? And number 2, can my friends join me? And number 3, could I potentially be incentivized? But that's my take on it.
Correct.
Back to you there.
Correct. And that's why, we lead with fun first.
Yep.
Everything we do is fun first. And in fact, the game launched, 18 months ago. And we did about 80 updates to the game over the last 18 months.
Holy crap.
And we basically update the game almost every week. And, for us, it was, our guiding kind of metric there is retention, is how many people are coming back after 1 day, 7 days, 30 days, 60 days, etc. And I'm of the belief that almost all the retention numbers in Web3 games with incentives are essentially false
Yeah.
in the sense that like you're essentially, you're providing, it's like, Uber's like ridership numbers. Like, sure, like when they were giving away free rides, the ridership numbers were huge, but they were also burning through like billions of dollars of VC cash. And so you have to like look at these things with a really critical eye and not lie to yourself. Be like as intellectually honest as possible. Approach it from first principles and be like, is it actually like what are what's the story numbers are actually telling? And is there anything that could potentially be, driving a false narrative here? And so I'm of the belief actually that most games in crypto have like false retention numbers, or they're getting botted pretty significantly because of so if you see really high DAU numbers, like it's almost certainly because there's incentives and there's like a high incentive to bot. Like you've just never been an incentive model like this before.
Yeah.
Like even if people botted like League of Legends or whatever, there's only so much you can extract
Exactly.
value from it, right?
Yeah.
But once you put a token or an airdrop or whatever in there, now it's like, oh, like if I can get a $10,000 airdrop, like I'll go buy machines.
100%.
Right? I'll go buy machines.
I will pay someone in the Philippines to log in every day and do the shit I asked them to. Yes.
Exactly. It turns into an ROI positive thing to do very unscalable things in order to actually spot these games. So I think all these things are legitimate criticisms against Web3 gaming. And that's why, for us and for my team, we're entirely focused on make it fun. Make it fun. What can we do to delight players more? And then find out how to layer in in fact, I think so we hide the crypto, hide all of it. Like if you didn't realize you're playing a crypto game, I think we've won. I think Polymarket's done a really good job of this on the prediction market side.
Agreed.
Right? Yeah. People don't realize that they're using a crypto application.
That
in
looks
fact,
like
Reddit avatars.
That looks like a Web2 betting site.
Exactly. And I think that's the model, right? So if you come and you play Pirate Nation today, there's still a little bit of like, oh, you can connect, you can bring your own wallet if you want. And that's just in order for us to support legacy users. But really where I want to go with this and where I've always wanted to go with this was you come to the site, you hit play, it says, log in with Gmail or email or whatever. Underneath the covers, we create the account for you. I think Cityverse is doing this already. Those guys, I think, are doing some mobile. And then basically like, it's just, you're just in it. And it's just happening beneath the covers. Now, what's cool about our stuff is not only are we provisioning and creating like an ownership wallet for you where your stuff lives, but then everything you're doing is now running on chain too. So every action you're taking is there. And so, it's really cool because literally from the second you reach the site, you're doing stuff on chain. You're interacting with the decentralized web without even realizing it. And to me, that's the winning user experience.
It's funny. The yous and the tomers who come on the show and the guys who do it right and the gals who do it right all say the exact same thing, Amitt, and that is look, feels, plays like Web 2, behind the scenes Web 3. No one gives a shit about. I didn't know that back in the day that FarmVille was on Flash. I do now that you told me, but like, half the applications I use, I don't know what programming language they're coded on, built on. I don't give a shit. If it works and it makes me happy, that's all I care about, And again, just makes me happy having great builders like you and Tomer on the show. I got to ask one question, the power of streaming. I don't watch a lot of streaming. In fact, I don't watch streaming. I just see the highlights on socials. I'm a 95, so I think the last or second last year of a millennial. All the folks younger than me, these guys are hooked on streaming. I'm not sure if you have a fam or not. Kids absolutely love streaming. They watch the Kai Sinets, the Aiden Rosses, the iShow Speeds, the Ninjas, blah, blah, blah. When you're building a game nowadays, how important is, the perhaps streamability of said game? Like, do you guys take that into consideration now?
Yeah, of course. My head of engineering was a technical lead on League of Legends, right? So
he gets it.
Like, he gets it. Yeah. He gets it. And in fact, like for our hackathon project, we have every once in a while we do an offsite with the company, and we do a hackathon. And for his last hackathon project, he did streaming in the game. So it was like, how do you do like spectator mode for PvP in our game? So we're constantly thinking about, not just the experience of the player, but the experience of the spectator. Actually, I have a great little anecdote on this. A friend of mine ran this company called Smash GG. It was the biggest tournament site for Smash Brothers.
Okay.
So Smash Brothers, very technical, twitchy game.
Yeah.
Right. And they would host like these huge tournaments. And he told me something very interesting. He's like, very high level play in Smash Brothers between two like really twitchy, like very like super micro action oriented players is like a shared flow state, right? It's kind of tennis is like this too. It's shared flow state. The two players, they're just like they're in it. And what they're doing is when people are watching two players at like the peak of this flow state interact with each other, they too are entering the flow state with the players. So when you think about what this could be, right? And so as a result, the audience is having a shared experience with each other because they're in the same thing.
That's powerful. And that doesn't grow on trees either. That shit does not grow on trees.
Exactly. It's the same reason music concerts and raves are like so powerful emotionally as well, is that you're having a shared experience with everyone else to the same beat, right? To the same rhythm. And so when you think about what streaming is, right, at its core, it's a way of directing people together to have this shared connected experience, right? And the streamer and the people who are having this are bringing people together for this moment. And so it's incredibly important to have, especially when you have competitive play, when you have community, to enable that streamability of it, because it's another opportunity for the community to connect. And that's the thing that's actually unique about Web3 games, is the community is like, it's woven throughout the entirety of the project. And I think this is actually where a lot of Web2 builders get tripped up. They can build great games, but they don't actually get the community aspect of it. And the idea that the game is not just the game they're building, but the game that extends beyond the game client itself into Discord, onto Twitter, onto the marketplaces, right? And so the idea is that we're not just designing the Pirate Nation micro interactions, the thing you're in the game. We're also designing the interactions between you and the rest of the community.
Dude, again, I wish we had more time. A couple more questions, we'll wrap up. Web3 gaming as a whole, hot takes, future of it. What's your sort of, micro, macro, whatever you want to call it? What's your thesis on Web3 gaming as a whole?
I mean, I think we're going to see a lot more mobile. I think Apple's starting to relax the rules a bit. So we're going to definitely see more folks go to mobile. As technologies improve, I think, to me, it's like obvious that the right thing to do is to like hide the crypto and essentially enable like really like frictionless like login and sign up and so on, where you don't actually have to go and create accounts. I think we're going to see a lot of AAA stuff struggle a bit. It's just hard. I thought that of all the work we've done, even though like we did so much work before we launched the game, right? I think 90% of our learnings as a company came from after we launched the game and have had to live operate it. Right, listening to communities, seeing. I mean, the amount of effort we've put into economy design is just like, it's unlike anything we ever did in Web2, because there's no recourse. Yeah. Right. If we mess up, and all of a sudden there's a huge amount of inflation in some item or whatever, that's like, we can't like unwind that. We can't take that away.
You can't change that. That there's a token.
No, exactly. Yeah. And so that's how I see it. The other thing that I think is very early, this is a little bit more like further afield, is this idea of bringing community into design and creation of the game itself. I think most people are just trying to figure out how to make the game work, without involving the community. But one of the benefits that we're seeing is because we're fully on chain, everything, all the game code, all the game data is available to other builders. So they can take our game, they can fork it, they can remix it, they can mod it, they can do whatever they want with it. And so we're seeing other people start to build on top of it. And I think there's some really interesting things that come out of people starting to build games on top of other people's games. League of Legends and Dota came out of Warcraft 3. Counter-Strike came from Half-Life, right? And so the ability to enable the next generation of builders is really exciting. And hopefully we'll start to see more of that. But I think it's a little bit more further afield, because just like, I think these like primer games are just trying to find their footing first.
Yeah. I love your take on the AAA games. Just for the listeners at home, again, I was fortunate to work with some incredible teams. A game like Call of Duty, a game like, the perfect example, everyone's waiting for GTA. Like GTA 6 is what? How many years has this been now? How many hundreds of millions of dollars? Yes, GTA has distribution. There's a 100% chance they will be profitable. But for those games who have raised, 7 figures, 8 figures, and are deploying a shitload of that money before they launch, there's a massive risk. It's the same as creating a movie. Like, you're putting 8 figures into this thing and you're just sort of praying it hits. If it hits, you're going to make a shitload of money, but you have a hell of a lot better chance that it doesn't hit and you fail, then versus you hitting. So it's not like, these very clean, easy mobile games like the Candy Crushes that don't take a whole lot to kick off, and and you can iterate on the fly. It's very different. So interesting take there. Any other hot takes before we let you go, Amitt? Anything spicy you got for us? I can tell that the hamster wheel's spinning and you got a bunch of shit cooking up in there.
I have a take for when I invest in projects, for example, or I decide to commit to something.
Yeah, what's your workful there?
And the way we're running this company is the same. Is I look at I call it dev cycle speed. So it's how fast is the team shipping, how fast are they iterating, how fast are they responding, right? Again, like this, the creation of our game is a dialogue between us and our community, right? And it's possible for us to basically just like lose the plot, right? It's easy for us to just like, not respond quick enough, to ignore what our community is saying, not change our minds. And this is why so much of our learning has come after the fact. So the example I use here is like, look at like Uniswap. So Uniswap was dominant when it launched. It had this, they had this this AMM model. It was the automated market maker. It was like the first kind of like easy swap site. Yeah, and all the liquidity was there. Yeah.
2020, 2021. Yeah. And then, bingo.
And then SushiSwap came out, and their entire thing was, what we're going to do is we're essentially going to incentivize, we're going to drop our fees to zero, and we're going to incentivize people to list on SushiSwap instead. And so the entirety of Web3 is mercenary. It's zero sum. It's all incentives. And so if you go and you create an incentive model where it makes sense for someone to go and pay, where you're basically paying people to list on your site versus another, they're just going to do it, right? And Uniswap, didn't have a token. SushiSwap did. All the liquidity providers of Uniswap moved over to SushiSwap, and that was it. They were like, oh, like, of course, we'd rather get paid than not get paid. And then Uniswap, to their credit, quickly responded. They launched token, and now they're doing great. And SushiSwap's done. And so that's an example of like a team like responding quickly, having a sense of urgency, shipping, not just resting on their laurels. And to me, the teams, at least in this space, because it's moving so quickly, are the ones that are constantly acting with a sense of urgency. That are moving quickly, are iterating. And so just to call out a team that's not ours, I think the Pixel teams has done a really good job of this.
Yep.
Right. They were moving. They iterated. They switched their stuff really quickly. Infinigods is another example of a team that's doing this. I think you have to, in order to continue to kind of like learn from your mistakes, to iterate, to figure out how to like continue to build and build and build and build. And so that's I think as your listeners are looking for places to go and spend their time and energy or whatever, I recommend using that as a guiding principle.
And so for the non-investors, for most of us, the average Joes and Josephines, you would look at something as small as response times in a Discord or a Telegram or a, Twitter support, whatever the case may be, anything like that. You want shit to happen. You want it quick.
Yeah. I mean, it's exactly. And it's a sense of people like acting from first principles. I mean, like, look, like our most of my team are folks who have done very well for themselves in Web2, have built games before. Like, it's not necessarily interesting for us just to go and build more games and replace like credit cards with like crypto payment rails.
You guys care about this.
No, we actually truly do, right? We are like, I care about the decentralized web. I care about moving the state of art of game development forward. I care about solving problems that enable new types of builders to build. And like, so that's the thing that gets us up every day. That's the thing that we really obsess about. Nothing like, the majority of the time in this space on crypto Twitter, whatever, is spent on all the financialization of the stuff. And to me, it's the least interesting thing. It's really about, that light bulb moment for me, the first time I deployed a smart contract, and it was just like, this thing just runs. I don't have to run a server.
Yeah, it's wild.
It was like, it was mind blowing. And so it just felt really empowering. And so I hope that more people really focus on that in the future and really realize that, hey, we're really on the cusp of building something really, truly great here.
And Amitt, you've heard those stories where it's like Elon Musk getting a text 1:00 in the morning, responds in 2 minutes. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. You've heard of all those, like, I'm a big Twitter guy. I don't know, Paul Graham's in the news right now, but you've heard all those guys be like, the best founders get back to you in 2 friggin' minutes, Even if it's just a message read,
a lot.
Yeah.
I've invested a lot, and I, knock on wood, have had access to some really world-class founders through either my investors or whatever it may be. And that's a pretty consistent trait that we've seen, is that the best founders, they're just like, they love the problem. They love the energy of building. They want to keep getting better. And the game to them is not the financial, the valuation, all that stuff is just, that's a lagging indicator of just like, are we doing great work here every day? Focus on the inputs. Do I get energy from work? And do I feel challenged? Am I working with great people? And that's the chop wood, carry water every day. You know, that's the meditation.
I love it. Dude, this was all world. Really, really appreciate your time and got to have you on for round 2. Just your ability to distill complex topics into little bite-sized, like, you know, 5-year-old one-liners is just good shit. Appreciate you for that. Before we let you go, any news on Pirate Nation, any news on Proof of Play, please do tell us. And of course, plug all the socials and websites as well. And we always will be in the show notes, but plug it anyways.
Sure, yeah. So you can find us at Pirate Nation on Twitter. That's probably the best place. Join our Discord. The game is available at piratenation.game. Lots of cool stuff coming up. One of the things that we are working on is the multi-chain. We have our own chain called Apex. We're maxed out. We are doing, like you said, 2 million transactions a day, 45 MGAS, which basically means a lot of throughput. Like that's basically bandwidth in blockchain talks, how much gas you're spending a second. So we're doing 45 megagas per second. That's a lot. That's more than every L1 and L2 combined. So players are pushing a lot of data. We're hitting like all-time highs in DAUs and all sorts of other stuff. The game's going really fast. We've had to, unfortunately, shut down signups until we increase capacity. So we're building this thing called the multi-chain, which is we're launching more than one blockchain. We just announced our second blockchain boss today, and that will double our capacity. The idea is that we can keep launching new chains to increase capacity the same way that, you know, in Web 2, we just launched new databases or new web servers in order to support more players playing the game. So lots of really cool stuff at Proof of Play and at Pirate Nation. Please follow along in our socials and come try the game out when we open up signups again.
And last thing, your own Twitter.
Oh, yeah. I'm at Amitt, AMITTM on Twitter. So, yeah, I post lots of techno, nerdy stuff that tends to be... so if you're into that kind of thing, please give me a follow.
I love it. Amitt, truly what an episode. Really appreciate you coming on. Wishing you and the team all the best. Not that you guys need it, but wishing you and the team all the best. And again, got to have you on for round 2. Non-negotiable. Got to make that happen. Appreciate your time, my man.
Yeah, thank you. Me too. Thanks. I'm glad we got a chance to make this happen.
You got it. Folks, what an episode with Amitt Mahajan, founder of Proof of Play, and of course the creators of Pirate Nation. One of the best episodes of the Crypto News Pod. This was truly a masterclass, folks. Not just on Web3 gaming, but, you know, a little bit of psychology, Web2 gaming, just how the world works. Give this one a listen and you will absolutely enjoy it. If you enjoyed this one, I hope you did. Please do subscribe. It would mean the world to my team and I. Speaking of the team, love you guys so much. Thank you for everything. Eustace, you are the man. And back to the listeners, love you guys. Keep on growing those bags and keep on staying healthy, wealthy, and happy. Go touch some grass. Enjoy the last month of summer. Love you guys, and we'll see you on the next one. Ciao.